Hello everyone, this is teacher Haneen, and today we're going to learn how to write a story. So writing stories is today's lesson. First of all, what is a story? A story is a piece of writing that tells what happens, with whom it happens, and when and where it happens. So a story it talks about a group of actions that are done by someone at a certain time and in a certain place. All the stories in the world, they have elements. We call them elements. And the stories need 4 elements. They need characters, and the characters can be people or animals. So the characters of the story, they can be people, so you can read a story about people or animals that talk in the story. And you have also the setting. And remember when we said that the setting is time and a place. And then you need actions. And now you should know that the actions have 2 kinds. That you have the rising actions and you have the falling actions. Now, the rising actions are all the things that happen in the story that cause a problem. So if something happens in the story at the beginning of the story and led to a problem in the story, the big problem in the story is called a rising action. So the rising actions are the actions that lead to the problem or to the climax. We call it a climax of the story. And the falling actions are everything that is done by the characters to solve the problem in the story. So we have rising actions and we have falling actions. Rising actions and falling actions. So we need characters, we need setting, and we need actions, and we need a resolution, an ending for the story. So these are the 4 elements of the story. Now, when you write a story, you should build the story of 3 parts. That means you need to have 3 parts in your story. You should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end for the story. So the beginning of the story should include the characters and the setting. So you start the story by telling the readers who are the characters and the setting of the story. So that is the beginning of the story. You need to tell the people what are they reading about, what is the story about. So you need to include the characters and the setting in the beginning of the story. Now, after starting the story, you have rising actions. Remember when we said rising actions, that the things that happen to cause the climax, the problem on the story. So you have a rising action, you have a climax. After the climax, the characters will try to solve the problem in the story. And these trials or these actions are called falling actions. So you have rising actions, you have the climax, and then you have falling actions. Now, after all the actions are done, you should have a resolution, and the resolution is actually the ending of the story. It is when you end the story. So you have a beginning, rising actions, climax, falling actions, and the resolution. Okay? Now, first, we will have two kinds of practice. First of all, we will practice on a story that we all know. Then we will try to write our own story. So first of all, we will talk about a story that we all know and like, which is Little Red Riding Hood story. Now in Little Red Riding Hood, first we need setting. So what is the setting of the story Little Red Riding Hood? The setting is a place. So Little Red Riding Hood was living in a small house with her mother in the wood. So this is the setting. So a small house in the wood, and the time is a time in the past. So it's a certain time in the past and in the woods. Then we need characters. Who are the characters of Little Red Riding Hood? Of course, Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf, grandma, and the woodcutter. So these are the characters. And remember when we said that the characters can be people and animals? So we have here people and we have an animal, which is the wolf. Now, what are the rising actions in Little Red Riding Hood story? Remember the story? First, Little Red Riding Hood met the wolf, and then the wolf told her to go and pick some flowers for grandmother, and she went and picked some stories and picked some flowers for grandma, and the wolf tricked her to go to grandma's house and to sleep in her bed. So these are the rising actions that led to the problem, to the big problem that happened. So you have things with the rising actions that caused the climax of the story. Now you need the climax. Now what is the climax? It's when the wolf went to grandma's house and attacked grandma, and then Little Red Riding Hood went to visit her grandmother, but she didn't find grandma. She found the wolf instead in grandma's house, in grandma's bed, exactly. Now after the big problem of the story happened, now there are things that cause the following actions that will reach to the ending of the story. So the following actions are when the wolf attacked Little Red Riding Hood and tried to eat Little Riding Hood, and she was screaming for help, and the woodcutter heard her and came to help her. Now the ending of the story is when the woodcutter killed the wolf. That's how the story ended. That was Little Red Riding Hood. So it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Beginning, setting the time and the place and the characters. You had rising actions, you had climax, you had falling actions, and you had the resolution, the ending of the story. Now, in the story, we usually describe actions that happened with the characters in some time in the past. Now, usually when we read stories, the stories are written in the past tense. Remember, the past tense is when you talk about a certain time in the past, things that happened and done in the past. The things that happened and done in the past. And remember, the past tense has two forms: the regular form, in which you use the ed, and the irregular forms like see, saw, go, went. You should use the past tense when you write a story. So the past tense is used in stories. You use the simple past tense. You add ed to the regular verbs, and you can use the irregular verbs also in the story. Now, in the story, remember that the people are only reading words. They're not watching a movie. So you have to help the readers to imagine the things and imagine the actions in the story. So how can I help them to imagine the characters? How do they look like? What are they doing? And how do you help them do that? You use adjectives. Okay, you have to use adjectives and adverbs to describe, adjectives to describe the nouns, the people and the places, and you need to use adverbs to describe the actions. So you have to use a lot of adjectives, a lot of adjectives, because the adjectives will help the readers to understand and imagine everything that is happening in the story, or else they will be bored of reading your story. So you have to use the past tense and you have to use the adjectives and the adverbs. Also, in the story, you have characters, and the characters, they talk in the story. And remember our lesson about inverted commas? You should use inverted commas whenever your characters are speaking. So when a character talks, you should put the speech of the character in inverted commas, or what we call the speech marks, when your characters speak. And don't forget to use the reporting verbs well, like said, asked, shouted, roared, squeaked if you had a mouse, begged. These are the reporting verbs that you should include them. And don't include the same reporting verb in every time, because it will be boring. So you need to change. Instead of using asked, you can use questioned, okay? Instead of saying just said, you can say shouted. So you should be creative and use all the words that you know in the story. After you finish the story, you should, now you have written the story, you should write an appropriate title for the story. Don't write the title first. You should write the story, then write the title, because after you finish the story, you will choose the best title in the world. And the title is very important, because if the title is nice, it will encourage and it will make people want to read your story. And if it's just boring or regular, it will be not very interesting to read. Now, all the stories, why do we have stories? We said that we have stories because there is a message that you want to send to people, and you send it by writing a story. So there is a moral, a lesson learned in the story. So you should have a title and a moral for the story. These are things that make your story perfect. Now we're going to practice how to write a story, okay? I have a story for you that I prepared. You will have a homework just similar to this story, but I made this as a sample to help you in order to write your own story, okay? Now we have here pictures. Can you see the pictures? Now we have here a father and a daughter. We have what it seems a swing. They look as if they were at a park. They are trying to make a swing, and the girl here is very happy. So you can be creative. Any actions that come to your mind are suitable, but this is something that I wrote for you in order just to show you how to write a story. I included some word bank. Now, you don't have to use all the words. You can use your own words, of course, but I included some words for you to help you to write your own story, like robe, pipes, dad, Alice, nails, swing, happy. Of course, I named the girl Alice, but you can name her, like you can name her Suha, Maha, Lana, whatever name you want is just fine. It's just fine. Swing, happy, fast, high, amazing, fly, surprise. So you have a mixture of words. You have nouns, verbs, adjectives. You should include all of the words in your sentences. Now, skip the title because the title I wrote it after I finished everything. We will not just start with the title. Let's read here together. Remember when we said that the story should have a beginning, and what do we write in the beginning of the story? We write the setting. So here we have the setting. It was a sunny hot day. Alice was sitting quiet at the park. So you have time, hot day, so it's summer, and you have a park, which is the place. And you should also include your characters. Well done. So we have Alice and we have Dad here. What's wrong? Dad asked. So we have Alice and we have Dad. I'm bored. I wish I have a swing, replied Alice. Now, I want you to notice the inverted commas. Every time a character talks, I included inverted commas to surround the speech of the character. And here, I used the reporting verbs like asked because it's a question, replied because he asked her and she replied. I could have just changed it into said. I can because this is something that Alice said, but it's better to have replied. It's nicer. It makes your piece of writing perfect and very interesting. Dad had an idea. We can build a swing. Dad said, we can? Alice questioned. Sure, said Dad, but we need tools, a rope, a nice piece of wood, nails, and a metal pipes. Now, these are what we call them rising actions. These are things that happen in the story and it will lead to the problem. Later, you will find the problem. And I want you to notice here that I used some adjectives like nice, okay, metal. These are adjectives. I could have just said a piece of wood, but using nice and using metal pipes, like if I didn't say metal, maybe you will think that he needs plastic pipes. So no. He needs metal pipes. Metal is an adjective that helps the reader to imagine what is happening in the story. Alice liked the idea. It was nice to build her own swing. She started imagining how it looked like, how happy she will be while playing with it, how high she could go, and how she will invite her friends to play on the swing with her. And I want you here to notice the verbs that I'm using. Like I'm using liked. I'm using asked, past tenses, okay? Now, all of these, the things that happened, that they had an idea of building a swing and they were preparing themselves and preparing the tools and Alice liking the ideas. These are all rising actions. Now, what is the problem in the story and what we call climax? Climax is a problem in the story. It's Dad started collecting the tools he needed to build the swing for Alice, but he couldn't find he couldn't find strong ropes for the swing. So here is the problem. He was preparing himself to make the swing for his daughter Alice, but he couldn't find strong ropes for the swing. So that's a big problem for them because without the ropes, they will not be able to make the swing. Dad was taking a long time here, was, past tense, preparing the tools. Dad, Alice shouted. See the reporting verbs here? Dad said, I don't have any strong ropes. Alice felt very sad. Without the ropes, I will not have a swing, cried Alice. So all of the things that are happening here are falling actions. So these are what? Falling actions. Dad remembered that he had an old rope he once used to tie a tree. I found it, Dad said happily. And look at the adverb here. It describes the verb said. I included it because you need to imagine that the dad is very happy, like I found it. So happily is an adverb. Now we can build the most beautiful swing in the world. See the adjectives, they add to your story. Dad and Alice worked very hard. They worked for long hours. Finally, they finished the swing. It was very nice. Alice is very happy now. Now look here. It was very nice. Alice is happy now. What is this? This is how the story ended. They finished the swing, so they made the swing. The problem is solved, and Alice is happy. She's not sad anymore or bored. Together we can make everything. Thank you, Dad, said Alice. This is the moral, is that when two people work together, or two brains, we always say two brains are better than one. So when two people work together, they help making things better and faster, okay? So this is the moral or the lesson learned. So we had in the story a beginning that included the setting. We had a rising action or actions. We had a lot of things happening. You had the problem of the story. You had the falling actions, the resolution, and the lesson learned, which is the moral. Now, after I finished everything, I was thinking of I was thinking of a title. So I was thinking, what should be the title? The story is talking about what? So I figured out the swing. It's a nice title, or you can change it. You can say Dad and Daughter. Any title will suit us. After writing the story, you should have the title. Okay? Now, I want you to watch this video very well. After you watch it and study the examples that we included in this video, you will find a worksheet, and I want you to write a story about the pictures in the worksheet. And see you again. Bye.